In this short presentation, we're going to be looking at critical evaluation and how that links into being a critical reader. So all the time we are making critical decisions about what to read. We have to actively download an article from a database, we have to actively go to the library, pick a book off the shelves, we have to actively open our lecture notes that we've been perhaps handed. All the time we're making judgments. We can't read everything that's out there on every single topic. So what guides our choices? This might be a reading list which identifies essential reading. This might be something that was flagged up in a lecture. It might be you know nothing about a topic at all, so you turn to an Oxford Very Short Introduction or even a Wikipedia article to get to grips with something. It might be just that you know somebody's a key author in the field. Or if you've read something and you think it's really good, you might look at the references and see what they read to help you decide what you want to read in more detail. We're constantly making judgments. We apply our own criteria, but sometimes we do this subconsciously. So really what we need to do is, before we read, we make a judgment about something, but also once we're reading something, we need to make sure that we're constantly engaging with that material. And this goes back to when we talked about note making before. What we don't do is just write down absolutely everything that this author says. We should constantly be making connections in our head. Does this fit with everything else that I know? Does this support my argument? Does it go completely against my argument? Is that because I'm wrong, or is that because they're coming at it from a different perspective? So we need to make judgments, and we need to write those down, because that's what's going to make a great essay, or when we're talking in a supervision, making those connections. That's what it's all about. So don't read things at face value. Constantly check them against everything else that we know. So just to make this a really kind of stark contrast, the non-critical student would just read a text for facts, for statements. They would build their narrative around these statements. They wouldn't engage with them at all. They wouldn't compare them with one another. And they would just assume that every resource they approach is absolutely the same in terms of validity, in terms of authority. They would just insert them into their own argument. Whereas the critical student is constantly looking at everything they read and hear as an interpretation of the facts. They're bringing them together into arguments that align with one another. They're then comparing them to their own argument and how that fits in, constantly questioning everything that we hear, everything that we read, and not taking anything as there being one way of doing anything. So when you're evaluating things that you read, or when you decide what you're going to read, we make judgments about how relevant is this. As we said, sometimes you might need a really general text. Other times you might be looking for something really, really specific to answer a particular question. You might be looking for a single citation that really supports your argument. How relevant is this to the topic and to your particular need? Who are they? Who's written this? You know, who's the author? Have they just written one book on this? Was this their PhD thesis? Have they written 20 books in this field? Who's the publisher? You know, is this a self-published work? If it's on the internet, obviously anybody could have generated that information. So constantly looking for the authority and making sure that this is a rigorous document that you're reading. And if it's not, why is it out there? Why has it been perhaps cited elsewhere? That's equally valid for your argument, but you just need to make that clear to your reader. What's the purpose? Why did they create it? Did they have a particular background? You know, was it written in a particular time, a particular geographical context? Is a company behind this? Has somebody funded this piece of research that's going on? So again, always asking those questions. Checking the methodology, and more you'll find that through open data you can go out there and test some of the science that's out there. You can test some of these theories, you can access people's data sets so that this material can be gone through again, and do people come up with the same conclusions? Do they interpret it differently? And how current is it? Now, of course, sometimes it's really important that we're reading things from different contexts, from different time periods, but equally remember that if something was written 50 years ago, that research may now have been superseded. So you might need to put that into context. So like we said, ask yourself these questions before. Why am I reading it? What do I want to get out of it? What do I already know? And sometimes this can be a really important way of structuring your reading. Make a list of what you know. Now, you don't need to read that again. So when you go through a piece of work, just target your reading to fill in the gaps in your knowledge. And if you are trying to answer a specific question, once you've answered that question, you can stop reading. You don't need to carry on reading in any more detail. And then constantly, as you go through, answer these questions. And sometimes it's quite useful to have this as a sort of structure. We talked in the note-making presentation about creating some sort of template for when you are reading or when you're listening to a particular lecture. So think about these questions, jot them down in the margin, even use it as kind of subheadings. You know, what am I getting from this? Who is this person? Because when you come to write up your essay, some of that contextual information will be really, really important. And make sure you don't forget it as well by jotting it down. Sometimes it's quite difficult to do that. It's quite difficult to be critical from the outset. Sometimes we like to write things down in a linear way, what we're hearing, what we're reading, and then to engage with it at a later date. So another sort of template that you could apply to your reading is this sort of one, where you do write down, first of all, what that text says, what the lecture says. It's just restating things as they've been given to you. You then might want to discuss this a little bit in a little bit more context. But finally, you do need a section where you question what this means to you as the reader. You interpret it in terms of everything else that you've read, everything else that you know, the argument that you want to make. You must have some sort of thesis about this. And if you don't, if this is a new area to you, that can stay blank, and then you can go back and fill in that section before you start writing about it. And look at this as an iterative process. As I said, you don't necessarily just read and take notes once. You go back to them, you revisit them. So constantly describing things, analysing them and evaluating them. And the evaluating them, that's the most important one really. The so what, you know, what am I going to do with this information that I've read? How am I going to apply this to other things? And this you might read something that raises more questions than it does answer something, in which case off you go again. You're going to need to do some more reading to feed into that process, and all the while you're building a stronger argument. So just remember, of course, that we also all bring our own bias as well to everything we read. We might select text based on our own preferences and trying to support our own argument, but it's really important that we read broadly, that we listen widely, that we don't, you know, in a way, perhaps on social media, when we follow people whose views we agree with, which results in this kind of echo chamber. It's really important to look outside our own opinions, and that will help us build stronger arguments. Ultimately, if you look at counter perspectives but still agree with your original perspective, that's fine, but that will make for a stronger argument. So think about what you're choosing, why you're choosing it, why you're interpreting it in a particular way, and build that and make that clear in any arguments that you make. So as we say, when you start reading, when you start making notes, when you start writing, always have a strategy. Don't just plow straight into it. Don't just open the first book that's at the top of your reading list. Have a reason for reading something. Then constantly analyze it as you go, constantly interpret it, and that's great for your notes, because if you've got interpretive elements, then you can drop those straight into your essay rather than just copying out what somebody else has said. And most importantly, constantly challenge, constantly question everything that you read and hear, and that will make you a much better academic.